The chamber was massive. It floated in space, spinning slowly around the bright star of the Coalition's capital world. Inside, representatives from 47 different species sat in their assigned seats. The air was filled with a dozen different breathing mixtures, separated by invisible force fields. Some aliens had scales, others had fur, some glowed with their own light. Captain stood in the center platform, his human military uniform looking plain compared to the elaborate costumes around him. His face was hard and tired. Next to him stood Ambassador, wearing Earth's diplomatic robes. Her hands shook slightly, but her voice would not. "This is wrong," said clearly. "Humanity has served the Coalition faithfully for 80 years. We have bled for it. We have died for it." Above them, the Supreme Arbiter unfolded his 4 arms. He was tall and thin, like a praying mantis made of silver metal. His voice echoed through the translation systems. "Ambassador, no one questions human sacrifice. We question human methods." A hollow display appeared in the air. It showed last battle 3 months ago. Pirates had attacked a civilian transport ship. The Soul's Pride had responded. The video showed doing something that made the entire council gasp when they first saw it. He had used his own ship as bait. He sent out a false distress signal, made his ship look damaged and helpless. When the pirates came close to finish them off, had detonated his secondary reactor. The explosion killed the pirate fleet. It also nearly killed his entire crew. "You sacrificed your own people," said. 23 humans died in that explosion. You calculated their deaths as acceptable." "I saved 2,000 civilians," replied. His voice was rough. "Those 23 were volunteers. They knew what we were doing. Every single one of them agreed." And representatives stood up. They looked like walking crystals, their bodies reflecting light in rainbow patterns. This one was named the Coalition's military coordinator. "That is exactly the problem, Captain. In civilized warfare, we do not sacrifice our own. We fight with honor. We give warnings. We offer surrender. We follow the codes of combat that every species has agreed to for thousands of years." "Except humans," another voice called out. "Humans don't follow the codes." "The pirates weren't following the codes either," shot back. "They were killing civilians, they were." "Irrelevant," interrupted. "This is not about one battle. This is about a pattern. Humans are too violent, too unpredictable. You bring tactics from your home world, from your endless wars against yourselves. Ambushes, traps, deception. These things have no place in a civilized galaxy." Felt anger rise in his chest. He wanted to shout, to argue, to make them understand, but put a gentle hand on his arm. "Wait," her eyes said. "We request a vote be delayed," said formally. "Give us time to address these concerns. Let us show you." "The vote has already been prepared," said. "All council members have had 3 months to review the evidence. The question is simple. Should humanity remain a member of the United Species Coalition?" The chamber went silent. 47 species, 47 votes. The lights began to appear above each delegate. Green for yes, humanity stays. Red for no, humanity goes. The first light was red, then another, then green, then 2 more reds. Watched the lights bloom like deadly flowers. His jaw clenched. Beside him's breathing became faster. She was counting. He knew she was counting. When the last light appeared, the result was clear. 31 red, 16 green. "By majority decision," announced. "Humanity is expelled from the United Species Coalition, effective immediately." The words hit like a physical blow. Actually stumbled, caught her elbow, steadied her. "You have 30 days to evacuate all coalition stations and border worlds," continued. "All military alliances are terminated. All trade agreements are void. All defense networks protecting Earth and human colonies will be dismantled." "You're leaving us defenseless," said quietly. "There are species out there who hate us, without the Coalition's protection." "You should have considered that before breaking our laws of war," said. "The The crystal being actually sounded sad. Perhaps isolation will teach humanity to be more civilized. Finally spoke. His voice was low and dangerous. You're making a mistake. Are you threatening us, Captain? Asked. No, said. I'm making an observation. One day, you're going to face an enemy that doesn't care about your codes of combat, an enemy that doesn't give warnings or offer surrender. And on that day, you're going to remember that you cast out the only species that knew how to fight them. Remove them, ordered. Guards appeared, not human guards but warriors with plasma staffs. They didn't touch but they made it clear the audience was over. As they walked toward the exit, heard whispers from the delegates. Some sounded relieved, others sounded guilty. None of them changed their votes. Outside the chamber, finally let herself cry. Not loud sobs, just silent tears running down her face. I failed, she whispered. I failed everyone on Earth. No, said firmly. They failed themselves, they just don't know it yet. The next 30 days passed in a blur. Human ships evacuated stations that had been their homes for decades. Families packed up their lives. Soldiers abandoned their posts. The great defense satellites around Earth were powered down and left to drift, useless metal in the void. On the last day stood on the bridge of the Soul's Pride, repaired now after the battle that started everything. Around him floated the entire human fleet, 300 ships. It looked like a lot until you remembered the coalition had 10,000. Was there too, standing beside him. She had aged 10 years and 30 days. All ships report ready, Admiral, an officer said. Had been promoted, not because of skill, but because humans needed a leader for whatever came next. Set course for Earth, ordered. We're going home. The fleet turned as one, a river of light moving away from the coalition border. Behind them, alien ships watched their departure. Some fired salutes, species that had voted to keep humans, offering respect even in defeat. Others just watched silently. As the last human ship crossed into unclaimed space, looked at the long-range sensors. Beyond coalition territory, the galaxy stretched out forever. Somewhere out there were threats the coalition had never imagined. Enemies that would laugh at their codes of combat. They'll be back, said quietly. One day they'll come begging for our help. Will we give it? Asked. Was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, and it was not a kind smile. When the time comes, he said, we'll see if they can afford the price. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving the coalition behind. Earth waited ahead, alone in the darkness. But alone had always been humanity's natural state. They had survived it before. They would survive it again. 15 years had passed since the expulsion. Earth had changed in ways no one expected. Admiral Sung stood in the command center deep beneath the surface of Luna, Earth's moon. Banks of screens surrounded him, showing data from every corner of human space. At 62 years old, his hair had gone completely white, but his mind was sharper than ever. Report, he said to the room. Dr. Park looked up from her station. She was younger than barely 40, but she ran Earth's entire intelligence network. Her specialty was xenobiology, the study of alien life, but these days she spent more time studying alien politics. The coalition is having problems, said. She pressed a button, and a star map appeared on the main screen. Red zones spread across the eastern frontier like a disease. They've lost contact with 12 systems in the last month, 20 systems in the last year. Pirates? Asked, though he already knew the answer. No, something new. Pulled up another image. It showed a planet, but something was wrong with it. The surface was gray and dead, like all the color had been drained away. This was Helios Station 3 months ago. Population, 6 million, now, 0. Felt cold, evacuated. Consumed. The word hung in the air like poison, moved closer to the screen. Explain. The coalition is calling them the Devourers, said. They appeared 18 months ago from beyond the frontier. They're not like anything the Coalition has seen before. They don't communicate. They don't negotiate. They arrive at a world and they strip it of all organic matter, all life. Then they move to the next world. How are the Coalition forces responding? Pulled up battle footage. Watched as Coalition ships, beautiful vessels designed as much for ceremony as combat, engaged with the Devourer fleet. The enemy ships were ugly, asymmetrical things that looked grown rather than built. The Coalition fleet followed their traditional tactics. They formed up in ceremonial battle lines. They broadcast warnings on all frequencies. They fired warning shots across the enemy's trajectory. The Devourers ignored all of it. They simply swarmed forward and began tearing the Coalition ships apart. "They're losing," said flatly. "Badly," confirmed. 40% casualties in every engagement. The Coalition keeps fighting the same way, following their codes of combat. The Devourers don't care about codes. An officer approached. It was Myra, the chief engineer. She was short and built like a boxer with arms strong from years of hands-on work. "Admiral, we just received a coded message from the neutral zone. It's Captain Wu Han." His eyebrows rose. Wu Han was a name from the past, a former Coalition officer who had gone independent after the expulsion. He now ran a mercenary crew, taking jobs in the lawless spaces between empires. "Put him through." The screen changed to show Wu Han's face. He looked older and very tired. Behind him, his ship's bridge was dark and damaged. "Admiral," Wu said, "I'm sending you encrypted data, battle recordings from my last contract. I was hired to evacuate a colony before the Devourers arrived." "Did you succeed?" asked. Wu's face darkened. "We got 3,000 people out, 2 million died. The Coalition fleet that was supposed to protect them. They followed their protocols. They formed up in proper attack formation. They gave the Devourers time to surrender. And the Devourers tore through them in 40 minutes. Not a single Coalition ship survived." Wu leaned forward. "Admiral, I watched beings that I fought alongside for years die because they couldn't bring themselves to fight dirty. They had the numbers. They had the firepower. But they fought like it was a tournament, not a war." The data packet arrived, immediately began analyzing it. Her face went pale as she watched. "They're dying out there," Wu continued. "And they have no idea how to stop it. I'm sending this to you because I remember what humanity can do, what we had to do to each other for thousands of years. The Coalition expelled us for being too ruthless, but ruthless is what they need now." "Why are you telling us this?" asked. Wu smiled grimly. "Because sooner or later the Coalition is going to come begging for help, and when they do, I want you to be ready to name whatever price you want." He paused. "Make them pay, Admiral, for every year we spent in isolation, for every human colony they left undefended. Make them pay." The transmission ended. Stood silent for a long moment. Around him the command center had gone quiet. Everyone had heard. "Opinions?" finally asked. Myra spoke first. "We have the weapons. Over the last 15 years we've been building in secret, new ships, new tactics. No one out there knows what we're capable of now. The question is whether we should help them at all," added. "They cast us out. They left us to fend for ourselves. We owe them nothing." An older officer named spoke up. "But if the Coalition falls, the Devourers won't stop. Eventually, they'll come for us too." "Eventually, yes," agreed. "But not today, not this year, maybe not for a decade. We have time to prepare." "Or," Myra said quietly, "we could let the Coalition soften them up first. Let them take the casualties. Then we step in and clean up what's left." It was a cold calculation, but not wrong. Considered it. "We need more information," he finally decided. "I want everything our intelligence network can gather on these Devourers. Capabilities, weaknesses, fleet movements, everything." Already on it, confirmed. Myra, accelerate the weapons development program. If we're going to fight, I want every advantage possible. Yes, Admiral. Looked at the star map again at the red zone spreading across Coalition space. Worlds dying, billions of beings facing extinction, and the Coalition, proud in their honor and their codes, unable to stop it. Part of him felt satisfaction. They had earned this through their arrogance. They had thrown humanity away like garbage, and now they were paying the price. But another part of him, the part that had spent decades in Coalition service, that had fought beside alien warriors, that had seen the good in other species, that part felt something different. Sorrow. Sir, asked, when the Coalition comes asking for help, and they will come, what do we tell them? Turned to face his officers. Every one of them was watching him, waiting for guidance. They had all lived through the expulsion. They all remembered the humiliation, the anger. We tell them nothing, said. We wait, we prepare. And when they're desperate enough, when they've lost enough worlds and enough people that they have no other choice, he paused, we let them beg. Nodded slowly, and then we make them understand what it costs to cast out the only species that knows how to fight a war without rules. His voice was hard. They wanted us gone because we scared them. Now they need us because something scares them more. That's leverage, that's power, and we don't waste it. 6 months later, the emergency transmission came. It was brief, encrypted, and sent on old human Coalition frequencies that hadn't been used in 15 years. It said only, we need to talk, please. Read the message 3 times, then he smiled. Send a reply, he ordered. Tell them we'll consider opening negotiations in 1 month at a location of our choosing, and tell them to bring someone with authority to make real decisions. What terms should we prepare? Asked. Looked at the star map. The red zones had grown, 43 systems lost now, millions dead, and the Coalition, mighty and ancient, was finally breaking. Every term we can think of, said. They cast us out, now they'll pay to bring us back. The meeting took place on a neutral station floating in empty space between human and Coalition territory. The station was old, abandoned decades ago, but it still had power and air. More importantly, it was far from prying eyes. Counselor Song arrived first with her security team. She was 35 years old, daughter of Ambassador who had died 5 years ago from a broken heart as much as age. Had inherited her mother's role, but she had her own way of doing things. Where her mother had been diplomatic and patient, was sharp as a knife. Captain Park stood beside her, leader of Earth's Special Operations Forces. He was built like a soldier, compact and dangerous, with eyes that missed nothing. His team had spent the last month doing reconnaissance on Devourer movements. He knew what humanity was facing. The Coalition delegation arrived an hour later. Led them, still supreme arbiter after all these years. But he looked different now. Older somehow, though his metal body didn't age. It was in the way he moved, slower, more careful, like something inside him had broken. With came Ambassador. She was human, one of the few who had stayed in Coalition space after the expulsion, married to an alien and running a small trading company. When Earth needed someone to negotiate, they had asked her. She understood both sides. Thank you for coming, said as they entered the conference room. His translator made his words sound formal, but could hear the strain underneath. You said it was urgent, replied, not sitting down yet. That was 6 weeks ago. We've been watching the news. I assume things have gotten worse. His 4 arms moved in what might have been a gesture of defeat. 57 systems now. We lose more every week. Our fleets. He paused. We are losing this war. Yes, said simply, you are. The bluntness made several Coalition officers stiffen, but just nodded. We need your help. Now you do, said. She finally sat down and her team followed. 15 years ago you needed us gone. What changed? The galaxy changed, said. We thought. We believed that following the codes of combat, maintaining honor, showing mercy, these things were what separated us from savages. But the Devourers don't care about honor. They don't recognize mercy, and our codes are killing us. An intelligence officer on team spoke up. Our analysts have reviewed every battle report we could access. Your forces fight like it's a ceremony. You form up in lines. You broadcast intentions. You give warnings. The Devourers treat all of it as weakness. We know, one of the coalition officers said bitterly, but to abandon the codes, it would mean abandoning everything we are. Better that than extinction, Captain said. His voice was rough from years of combat. We've seen your battles. You're not just losing. You're being slaughtered. You have the numbers and the firepower to win, but you fight with one hand tied behind your back. And you want us to fight like humans, said, ruthlessly, without mercy, using tactics that we expelled you for employing. That's exactly what we want you to do, confirmed. Or rather, what we want to do on your behalf, because you've proven you can't do it yourselves. Ambassador spoke for the first time. Earth has prepared terms. I suggest you listen carefully. She activated a holographic document. The terms appeared in the air, translated into every coalition language simultaneously. Read them, his body went very still. Full reinstatement to the coalition with permanent veto power, he read aloud. Supreme military command of all coalition forces during the crisis. A formal apology broadcast across all coalition worlds. Reparations totaling. He stopped. This is impossible. Those are the terms, said calmly, non-negotiable. You're extorting us while we face extinction. Another coalition delegate stood up, anger making his crystalline body flash red. Yes, said, we are. Just like you expelled us while pirate attacks were killing our colonists. Just like you dismantled our defenses knowing it would leave us vulnerable. You made your choices. Now we make ours. This is not about revenge, Captain added. This is about establishing that humanity will never be cast aside again. You need us now. You'll need us again in the future. These terms ensure that next time there's a disagreement, you'll think twice before voting us out. Was silent for a long time. Around him, his delegation argued in whispers, some angry, some desperate. Finally he spoke, and if we refuse? Then you die, said simply. You die with your honor intact and your codes unbroken. The Devourers will consume your worlds one by one. Eventually they'll come for Earth too, but by then we'll have had years to prepare. We'll fight them on our terms with our methods, and we'll win, but you won't be there to see it. You would let billions die. You let millions die when you abandoned us, shot back. You made it clear that we're not your responsibility. Well, you're not ours either, not unless you meet our terms. The silence in the room was heavy. Ambassador looked sad but didn't speak. She knew this was necessary, even if it felt cruel. I need to consult with the full council, said finally. You have 72 hours, said. After that, we return to Earth and the offer expires. That's not enough time. It's more time than you gave us to evacuate our people 15 years ago, Captain interrupted. You gave us 30 days to upend our entire civilization. We're giving you 3 days to make one decision. Be grateful. The coalition delegation left. As the airlock sealed behind them, let out a breath. Do you think they'll agree? She asked. They have no choice, said. Their pride versus their survival, it's not even a real choice. Some of them will resist, warned. There are species in the coalition who would rather die than admit they need humans. Then they'll die, said coldly. She stood and looked out the viewport at the stars. I want to feel bad about this. I want to feel guilty for holding their survival hostage. But every time I start to feel something, I remember my mother. Ambassador asked quietly. She died believing she had failed humanity. The expulsion broke something in her that never healed. Its reflection in the viewport showed no emotion. So no, I don't feel guilty. I feel like we're finally making them pay for what they did. The 72 hours passed slowly. Earth's leadership waited for the response. Military forces stood ready to deploy or stand down depending on the answer. On the third day, exactly at the deadline, the message came. The coalition accepts your terms. Read the message twice, then forwarded it to Earth's command center. Within minutes, orders went out. Fleets that had been hidden for 15 years began to move. Soldiers who had trained in secret prepared for deployment. Weapons that the coalition didn't know existed were loaded onto ships. Ambassador arranged for the formal ceremony. It would be broadcast across every coalition world. Earth had insisted on that. No quiet agreements, no private deals. Everyone would see the coalition apologize. When the day came, stood before cameras that reached billions of beings. He looked diminished somehow, his metallic body seeming less bright than before. On behalf of the United Species Coalition, he said, I offer formal apology to humanity. 15 years ago, we made a grave error. We cast out our allies for fighting too ruthlessly, not understanding that sometimes ruthlessness is survival. We were wrong. We ask humanity to return, not as subordinates, but as full members with the authority to help us face this crisis. It was everything Earth had demanded: proper, public, humiliating. Watch the broadcast from Earth's command center. She should have felt triumphant. Instead, she just felt tired. What now? Asked. Now, said, we save them, not because we forgive them, not because we've forgotten what they did, but because innocent beings are dying and we're the only ones who can stop it. Captain stood beside her, and after we save them, smiled, and it was not a warm smile. After we save them, they'll owe us everything, and we'll make sure they never forget it. The first human warships crossed into coalition space the next day. Admiral, now 75 years old but still in command, led the fleet himself. Behind him came 300 ships, 3 times what humanity had possessed 15 years ago. New designs, new weapons, new tactics that the coalition had never seen. As they passed the border, coalition ships formed up as escorts. The alien crews watched the human vessels with a mixture of hope and fear. All ships broadcast, we're going to war, not for the coalition, for every innocent life they couldn't protect. Show them why they needed us. Show them why they should never have let us go. The fleet accelerated toward the front lines. The devourers were waiting, but so was humanity. The first battle happened at the system, a mining colony that the devourers had surrounded. 2 million beings were trapped on the planet below, waiting to die. The coalition fleet protecting them was down to 40 ships, barely holding the line. Fleet Admiral arrived with 200 human vessels. The coalition commander, a named Rax, immediately opened communications. Admiral, thank the stars you're here. We've been trying to hold them off for 3 weeks, but we're running low on everything. If we work together and maintain proper formation, we might be able to. No, interrupted. Rax's confusion was obvious even through the translator. No, but Admiral, the codes require that we. I don't follow your codes, said. That's why you brought us here. Now get your ships to the planet, start evacuating civilians. We'll handle the devourers. But that's against protocol. We should form a defensive line, present a united front. Commander Rax said, and his voice went cold. You have supreme authority over coalition forces. I have supreme authority over human forces. You wanted our help. This is what our help looks like. Now move your ships or watch from the sidelines. Rax hesitated, then gave the order. The coalition ships broke formation and headed for the planet. As they did, the Devourer fleet noticed the opening and surged forward. 300 enemy ships, ugly and organic, moving like a swarm of insects. All human ships, commanded. Broken wing formation, execute on my mark. The human fleet split into 3 groups. The largest group, with flagship at the center, moved forward to meet the Devourers head-on. It looked like a traditional engagement. The Devourers took the bait. They concentrated their forces on group, sensing an easy kill. "They're committing everything," Myra reported from her station. She was aboard's flagship, coordinating the technical aspects, right where we want them. Mark said calmly. His group suddenly broke formation. Instead of fighting, they scattered like frightened birds. Ships that a moment ago had been moving forward now fled in all directions. The coalition observers were horrified. "They're retreating," someone shouted. "The humans are running." But they weren't running, they were leading. Ships drew the Devourers into the asteroid field that surrounded. The human vessels moved with practiced precision, dodging rocks that had been there for millions of years. The Devourers followed, hungry for the kill. Now said. The mines activated. Human engineers had spent the last 2 weeks secretly planting explosives throughout the asteroid field. Thousands of them. Each one had waited dormant until this moment. The explosions lit up space like a new sun. Asteroids shattered into deadly fragments. Devourer ships were caught in chain reactions as mines triggered other mines. The organic vessels, tough but not indestructible, tore apart under the assault. Meanwhile, the other two human groups, the ones that had seemed to stay back, attacked from the sides. They hit the confused Devourer flanks with focused fire. No warning shots. No mercy. Just overwhelming violence. In 20 minutes it was over. 300 Devourer ships reduced to debris. The human fleet had lost 5 vessels, damaged but repairable. No deaths. Commander Rax's voice came over the channel, shocked. You set a trap, you deceived them." "Yes," said simply, "that's called tactics. But the codes forbid." "Your codes are why you were losing," interrupted. "My codes are why we won. Now finish evacuating those civilians." Word of the battle spread fast through the coalition. Some praised the human victory. Others were disturbed by the methods. The arguments filled every council chamber and news broadcast. General Sung didn't care about the arguments. He was on the ground at a planet the Devourers had invaded 3 days ago. The coalition ground forces had been fighting by the book, holding defensive positions, giving warnings, following evacuation protocols. They were being slaughtered. Arrived with 20,000 human soldiers. The coalition ground commander, a being named with 6 legs and armor plates for skin, met him in what was left of the command bunker. "General, the situation is critical," said. "The Devourers have overrun our eastern defenses. We've been trying to hold the line at the river, but they keep flanking us. If we retreat according to protocol." "We're not retreating," said. He looked at the tactical map. The Devourer forces were spread out, pushing against multiple points. "And we're not holding the line either." "Then what?" "We're going to do what humans do best," said. "We're going to make them wish they never came here." He split his forces into small units, 50 soldiers each. Each unit had specific orders. They moved into the ruins of cities, the forests, the underground tunnels. They didn't form lines. They didn't hold positions. They hid. They ambushed. They struck and vanished. The Devourers had never faced guerrilla warfare before. They would send a force to secure a building, and human soldiers would detonate the building, then disappear into the rubble. They would move through an area they thought was empty, and suddenly fire would come from 6 directions at once. Commander Wu hand-led one of the special units. His team had orders to target Devourer command organisms, the larger ones that seemed to direct the swarm. They tracked one through a collapsed subway tunnel, waited until it was separated from its guards, then hit it with everything they had. When ammunition ran out, they used blades. When blades broke, they used their hands. The Devourer command organism fell, and suddenly the swarm in that entire sector lost coordination. Human forces exploited the confusion ruthlessly. Coalition soldiers watched in shock and awe. They had never seen fighting like this. It was brutal, dirty, effective. One coalition sergeant asked a human corporal, "Don't you have rules about fighting, about honor?" The human, her face covered in dust and blood, laughed bitterly. "Honor doesn't keep you alive, friend. We learned that fighting each other for thousands of years. Now we're teaching the devourers the same lesson." Above the planet, another human officer named Sun was conducting a different kind of warfare. She was a specialist in psychological operations, finding ways to break enemy morale without firing a shot. The problem was that the devourers didn't have morale in the traditional sense. They were a hive mind, but had studied their communication patterns. They used biological frequencies to coordinate. What if those frequencies could be disrupted or used against them? She began broadcasting on those frequencies. Images of devourer defeats, videos of their ships being destroyed, audio of what humans called screaming sounds designed to be unpleasant to devourer sensory organs. It shouldn't have worked. A true hive mind shouldn't care about propaganda. But it did work, slowly at first, then faster. Devourer forces that had been advancing began to hesitate. Swarms that had coordinated perfectly started making mistakes. It was subtle, but it was there. Fear, the devourers were learning fear. 3 months after human forces engaged, the front lines had stabilized. The devourer advance had stopped for the first time in over a year. Coalition analysts couldn't believe it. "How are you doing this?" a coalition admiral asked during a strategy meeting. "We fought them for 18 months and lost ground every day. You've been here 3 months and they've stopped advancing. What's your secret?" Looked at the admiral. The alien seemed genuinely confused, like he couldn't understand what had changed. "We fight to win," said simply. "You fight to look good losing." "That's insulting." "It's true," interrupted. "Every battle you fought, you worried about following the codes, about maintaining honor, about fighting the right way. We only worry about one thing, making sure our people go home alive and theirs don't. That's the difference." Another coalition officer, one who had been at the battle, spoke up. "Your methods are disturbing, Admiral. The deceptions, the ambushes, the calculated brutality of it. This is not how civilized beings wage war." "You're right," agreed. "This is how humans wage war, and we're very, very good at it. You expelled us because it disturbed you. Now you need us because it works." The room went quiet. The truth was uncomfortable, but no one could argue with results. The devourers were being pushed back. Slowly, painfully, but pushed back nonetheless. As the meeting ended, a young coalition ensign approached Captain. The ensign was shaking slightly. "Sir," the ensign said, "I watched your forces retake the planet. I saw what you did to the devourers. It was—" He paused, searching for words. "It was terrifying, but also amazing. You saved millions of lives." "Yes," said, "we did, and we'll save millions more. But don't mistake us for heroes, kid. We're not here to inspire you. We're here to do the job you couldn't do yourselves." "I understand," the ensign said. "But sir, I'm glad you're here, even if your methods scare me." Smiled slightly. "Good, be scared. Fear keeps you sharp. Just make sure you're more scared of them than you are of us." As human forces continued operations, a pattern emerged. The devourers were no longer the unstoppable force they had been. They were learning caution, learning to fear, and in learning fear, they were learning to lose. The war was far from over, but for the first time the coalition had hope. And that hope wore a human face. 8 months after humanity joined the war, the coalition fleet gathered for the final assault. They had pushed the devourers back system by system, world by world. Now they faced the source, 3 planets where the devourers had first emerged, their breeding grounds and central hive. Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the assembled armada through the 5,000 ships, human and coalition together, the largest military force the galaxy had seen in centuries. All fleet commanders report ready, an officer announced. Opened the communication channel. Every ship could hear him now. Every captain, every crew member, every soldier. "This is Admiral," he said. "What we're about to do will end this war, but it won't be easy and it won't be clean. Some of you won't come home. Some of you will see things that haunt you forever. But you'll do it anyway because that's what we do. We finish what we start." He paused, looking at the data streaming across his screens. 3 worlds. Population estimates ranged from 800 billion to over 1 trillion devourers. "To all ships," he continued, "engage when ready, show them why they should have stayed in the dark." The fleet moved forward as one massive wave of metal and fire. The devourers fought back with everything they had. Their defense fleet was enormous, over 10,000 ships defending their home systems. The battle that followed would be remembered as the largest naval engagement in galactic history. Human ships led the assault, using tactics that still made coalition officers uncomfortable. Feints and deceptions, false retreats, coordinated strikes that ignored traditional battle formations. The Devourers had learned to fear these tactics, but knowledge and defense were different things. Captain Sung Min, a young officer barely 30 years old, commanded a destroyer group on the fleet's edge. His ships were with new weapons, human-designed plasma cannons that ignored shields and burned through hull plating like paper. "Enemy formation approaching," his weapons officer reported. 200 contacts. "Don't engage yet," Sung Min ordered. "Let them get closer, make them think we're weak." His ships held fire as the Devourer swarm approached. At the last moment, when the enemy was committed and couldn't retreat fast, Sung Min gave the order. "Fire everything." The plasma cannons lit up space. Devourer ships melted under the assault. In 30 seconds, 200 became 50. The survivors fled and Sung Min's group pursued ruthlessly. No mercy, no quarter, just the cold mathematics of war. On one of the coalition ships, an ensign turned to her captain. "They're not even giving them a chance to surrender." "The Devourers never surrender," the captain replied. He was old enough to remember when the war started. "They don't understand the concept, so why should we waste time offering it?" Down on the surface of the first Devourer world, General Sung led the ground assault. His forces had one mission: find and destroy the breeding centers. Intelligence said each planet had thousands of them, massive organic structures where new Devourers were spawned. The fighting was the worst anyone had experienced. The Devourers defended their home with absolute desperation. Human soldiers advanced through terrain that seemed alive, fighting enemies that came in endless waves. Commander Wu Han's team reached a breeding center first. It was huge, a pulsing mass of organic matter that stretched underground for kilometers. Thousands of young Devourers were inside, not yet mature enough to fight. "Set the charges," Wu ordered. One of his soldiers hesitated. "Sir, they're juveniles, they haven't even." "Set the charges," Wu repeated, his voice hard, "or I'll do it myself." The soldier obeyed. They all did, because they understood what would happen if they didn't. These juveniles would grow up. They would become the next wave that attacked coalition worlds, the next generation that consumed planets. The breeding center exploded in a pillar of fire that could be seen from orbit. Above the planet, in the command ship, Dr. Park monitored the operation from a different angle. She had been studying the Devourers for 2 years, trying to understand them. What she learned disturbed her. "Admiral," she said "I need to brief the council, immediately." An emergency session was called. Counselor Song attended, along with other coalition leaders, displayed her findings on the holographic screen. "The Devourers aren't what we thought," she said. "They're not a natural evolution, they're a weapon." The room went silent. "Explain," demanded. "I found remnants of genetic engineering in their DNA," continued. Someone created them, probably millions of years ago. A biological weapon designed to consume and multiply. But their creators lost control, and the devourers spread beyond containment. "Are you saying they're not truly sentient?" asked. "They have intelligence," confirmed. "But it's not individual consciousness like ours. It's more like a computer program running on biological hardware. They're designed to consume and replicate. That's all they do. That's all they can do." "Can they be reasoned with?" a coalition delegate asked hopefully. "Can we communicate?" "We've tried," said. "For months. Every frequency, every method. There's no response because there's no one to respond. They're not evil. They're not cruel. They're just programmed to consume, and they're very good at it." Looked at the data with his alien eyes. "Then what do we do?" "We have three options," said. "Option 1, push them back and contain them, but they'll always be there waiting to break out again. Option 2, try to modify their genetics, reprogram them somehow. That could take decades of research we don't have. Option 3." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. "Extermination," said flatly. "You want us to wipe them out completely." "It's the only way to ensure they never threaten anyone again," confirmed. "These three worlds are their breeding grounds. If we sterilize them, completely destroy all organic matter, the devourers in space will eventually die out. They can't reproduce without the breeding centers." The council chamber erupted, delegates shouting over each other, some demanding action, others horrified by the suggestion. "This is genocide," one delegate cried. "We cannot simply exterminate an entire species." "They're not a species," Captain argued. "They're a weapon, a very old weapon that's still working exactly as designed. Would you leave a loaded gun lying around because destroying it seems cruel?" "But the numbers," another delegate said weakly. "There could be over 1 trillion of them on those worlds. Even if they're not individually sentient, the scale." "I know," said. "Believe me, I know. But every day we delay, more coalition citizens die. More worlds are attacked. We came here to end this war, not to make it permanent." The debate went on for hours. Species that had spent centuries avoiding difficult choices now faced the hardest one imaginable. Could they order the death of trillions to save billions? Finally called for a vote. As supreme arbiter, he would cast the deciding ballot if needed. The votes came in. The council split exactly down the middle, half for extermination, half against. Admiral said, "As supreme commander of coalition forces, you have authority over military operations. The council cannot decide, so you must." Looked at the numbers, the projections, the cost in lives if they didn't act, the moral weight if they did. He thought about the 23 crew members who died in that first battle 15 years ago. The ones who volunteered to sacrifice themselves to save civilians. They had understood something important. Sometimes the only choice is which terrible price you're willing to pay. "Prepare the sterilization weapons," ordered. "We end this, today." The silence in the chamber was absolute. "You can't," someone whispered. "I can," said. "And I will, because someone has to. You brought us back to fight your war. This is what fighting looks like when you need to win." The order went out. Human ships moved into position above the three devourer worlds. The weapons they carried were terrible. Fusion bombs designed to ignite atmospheres, biological agents that would break down all organic matter, radiation pulses that would render the planets uninhabitable for thousands of years. Captain Sung Min received his orders and felt sick. His ship carried some of those weapons. He would be responsible for billions of deaths. "Sir," his weapons officer said quietly, "are we really doing this?" "Yes," Sung Min said. "We are. Because if we don't, those devourers will eventually reach someone else's world, someone else's family. Can you carry that weight instead?" The officer shook his head. "Then we carry this weight," Sung Min said, "and we live with it. That's the price of survival." The weapons launched. 3 worlds died in fire and poison. The devourer hive mind, distributed across trillions of organisms, felt its breeding centers go silent. Without them, it was finite, mortal, already dying. The remaining devourer ships in space fought with desperate fury, but it was over. Cut off from reinforcements, facing an enemy that wouldn't stop, they fell one by one. 2 weeks later, the last devourer ship was destroyed. The war was over. The memorial ceremony was held 6 months after the final battle. Representatives from every coalition species gathered on a neutral world. The monument was simple, a black stone wall with names carved into it. So many names. 3 million humans had died in the war. 40 million coalition citizens had died before humans arrived, and over 800 billion devourers had been eliminated. Stood before the memorial, looking old despite his metal body. Counselor Song stood beside him. "We owe you a debt we can never repay," said quietly, "but I must ask, how do your people live with what you've done, the magnitude of it?" "We carry it," said. "Every human who fought in this war will carry it for the rest of their lives. The knowledge of what they did, what they had to do, that's our burden." Why asked, "Why take on such weight?" "Because someone has to," replied. "You expelled us because our capacity for violence scared you, because we know tactics you consider dishonorable, but that knowledge exists whether you like it or not. Those tactics work whether they disturb you or not. We've used them on each other for our entire history. We know their cost, and we decided the universe would never make us use them again." "But we did," said. "We needed you precisely because of what we feared." "Yes," agreed. "You wanted us gone because we scared you. Now you want us here because we scared something else more. Just remember that. Remember what you cast out and what you had to beg to bring back." Ambassador joined them at the memorial. "The Council wants to honor the human forces. Medals, commendations, official thanks." "We don't need your medals," said. "What we need is your memory. Remember that when you face your next crisis. Remember who you called when civilization itself was at stake." They stood in silence before the wall of names, all those who had died, human and alien alike. Captain Sung Min stood nearby with his crew. They were being decorated today, but he felt no pride, only weight. A young coalition ensign approached him. "Captain, may I ask a question?" "Sure," Sung Min said. "Do you think we'll ever truly trust each other, humans and the rest of us?" Sung Min thought about it. He looked at the memorial, at all the names. Human soldiers who died saving alien worlds. Alien soldiers who learned to fight the human way to survive. "Probably not," he said honestly. "There's too much history, too much fear on both sides, but after what we've been through, maybe trust isn't what matters." "What does matter?" "Survival," Sung Min said. "Working together even when we scare each other, fighting for something bigger than ourselves." He paused. "The devourers didn't care about our differences. They would have consumed us all equally. Maybe facing that together is worth more than trust." The ceremony began, speeches were made, names were read, the dead were honored. Admiral, now retired, stood apart from the crowd. His hair was white, his body worn by war. He watched the proceedings with tired eyes. Counselor found him there. "You did it," she said. "You won the war." "We all did," replied. "Human and alien, we just had to learn to fight the right way." "Your way." "The winning way," corrected. "There's a difference." They stood together, watching the memorial ceremony conclude. The assembled fleet above them, human and coalition ships mixed together, fired a synchronized salute. The light of their weapons lit up the sky. "They haven't asked us to leave again," noted. "They won't," said with certainty. "We proved what we're worth. More importantly, we proved what it costs when we're not here." "Will there be another crisis?" asked. "Something else that needs us?" "Eventually," said. "There's always something, but next time we won't have to wait for them to beg, we'll already be here." The ceremony ended. The crowds dispersed. Life in the coalition continued. Humanity remained, not as outcasts, not as reluctant allies, but as permanent members who had proven their worth in blood and fire. They had been cast out for being too dangerous. They returned because danger was exactly what was needed. And the galaxy would never forget it.